Hey, welcome to the channel. I think I know what happened to Brianna Maitland, and my theory is based on three key assumptions. Number one is that she drove herself to the Dutch burn house after leaving work that night. Number two is that she was abducted from the Dutch burn house. And number three is that she was abducted by someone she knew and likely owed money to. If you're not familiar with the Brianna Maitland case, Brianna was 17 when she disappeared in 2004. She was last seen leaving work around 11 p.m. And within an hour, her car was spotted about a mile away from her job, backed up into an abandoned house, the Dutch burn house. Now, this case almost always gets brought up in the same breath as Mara Murray, which I've also covered. But unlike Mara, who, in my opinion, staged her disappearance, Brianna was abducted. And honestly, this case should have been solved. Police just didn't take this seriously. They assumed that she had ran away. Now, I don't know about you, but if I see a car backed into a house, the last thing I would assume is that the driver got out and ran away. If you see that and you think that, you should not be working in law enforcement in any capacity. So we'll do what the police should have done 20 years ago, which is figure out what happened to Brianna. First thing we have to ask is how did her car end up like that? Specifically in that orientation of being backed into the house. Because let's imagine for a second that you had just abducted Brianna Maitland. Now you're dumping her car at the Dutch burn house. Why not just leave the car? Why not just drive there, get out, and leave? Why would you risk giving yourself a concussion by driving into the house? Furthermore, as it concerns the random items that were found outside of the car, if you're ditching the vehicle, why would you litter? Why, if anything, you'd clean out the car before you leave it. You wouldn't get out the car and then drop a bunch of miscellaneous shit on the ground. It doesn't make any sense. And even more important, if this was a dump job, the person leaving the car would have needed a ride to get out of there, which raises the question, where would Brianna have been at this point? If you have one person dumping her car and another person picking that person up, then where's Brianna? You would have had to have another person involved actually holding Brianna at this point. So we have three people that have somehow abducted Brianna Maitland, and one of them is now dumping the car, and they decide to back the car up into the building and litter as they exit the vehicle. I find that scenario highly unlikely. And so, therefore, I don't think the Dutch burn house is a dump site. I believe that it is the actual location where Brianna was abducted. What I think happened is Brianna drove herself to the Dutch burn house after work to meet somebody or multiple people. And she was sitting in the driver's seat talking to someone who was standing near her driver's side door. Then something goes wrong. Maybe they get into an argument. Maybe they demand money. At some point, she realizes that she needs to get out of this situation. So now I want you to think about how an automatic transmission works in a car. If she's panicking, she's just trying to get out of there. The first gear that she has to shift into is reverse. She has to shift into reverse before she can drive away. If the person standing outside of her car grabs her as she's shifting into drive, she might either hit the gas or take her foot off of the brake while the car is in reverse. Therefore, it would reverse into the building. At this point, the person or people would pull her out of the car, and in the struggle, some of her stuff, belongings from the car, would fall onto the ground, and then they would continue to take her. Maybe they put her in the trunk and drove away. Maybe there were multiple people involved, or maybe this was the plan all along. Either way, I am very confident that this is where she disappeared, and that's how it happened. Now, we have to ask, who was she meeting? And this is a super important question because think about who she would be meeting at midnight in an abandoned area. It's not like she would be meeting a pastor or her guidance counselor. It would be shady people. And we know they were shady because they ended up abducting her. And there's reason to believe that Brianna knew that she was meeting shady people that night. She had left her roommate a note saying that she should be home after work. Now, again, I don't know about you. I've had a lot of roommates in my life. Never have I ever left a note saying where I would be after work. And this is because I've never had a reason to be afraid that I wouldn't make it home from work. But if Brianna was afraid that she was walking into a sketchy situation and also felt like she had no choice, then leaving a note would make complete sense. And this might also explain why she wasn't living at home. If Brianna owed money to dangerous people, maybe she moved out of her parents' house to protect them. If she thought she was in danger and that her debts could make her family a target, then moving out would be a way to shield them. If she was staying at a friend's place or even living in her car, that could have been a conscious choice to keep her parents out of whatever situation she was in. It would also explain why, despite being scared by evidence of the note that she left her roommate, she still went to meet these people. Maybe she just felt like she didn't have a choice. If that's the case, and I'm just speculating here, her decision to leave home was incredibly selfless. She may have been scared for herself, but even more scared that her family could be harmed because of her, and I would have to respect that. It's also possible that she just wasn't living home because she wanted to do drugs and like her parents wouldn't allow her to do drugs. I don't know. I'm just, if you look at the fact that she did leave a note, which would suggest that she was afraid, and she still went to go meet these people, then she must have felt like she had no choice. It's the only, like, why would you go if you felt it was dangerous? Unless you felt like you had no choice. Oh, this is important too, because a few days before Brianna disappeared, she got into a fight with another girl. Her boyfriend or Brianna was talking to the girl's boyfriend or something like that. And some people hyper focus on this fight, suggesting that this girl abducted Brianna or got others to do it for her. It's completely ridiculous. Like, first of all, the girl didn't abduct Brianna. And even in a scenario where the girl knows people who took Brianna, they probably would have abducted Brianna anyway. I doubt the fight was the catalyst. It was probably just another piece of drama in her life, and therefore a red herring in this case. But we have to be honest and say that it was suspected that Brianna was using drugs, specifically heroin, and a lot of people think that's why she wasn't living with her parents anymore. Now, some people get mad when you bring up the victimology in this case because they think it means that you're blaming the victim. But I'm not doing that. I smoke weed all day, every day. Like, I don't care if people do drugs. But with that being said, if I was a heroin addict and I owed somebody money for heroin, and then I was subsequently abducted and murdered, nobody would act like this was some great mystery. Nobody on Earth, nobody on planet Earth would suggest that Israel Keys killed me if I was a heroin addict that owed heroin money and then I was abducted and murdered. Nobody would think that. Everybody would assume, yeah, he owed money. That's what happened. So why is it any different in this case? Now, how can I say that Brianna was possibly using drugs? Well, there were needles found in her car, and people say that she was using drugs. But also, she was working two jobs, which, in my opinion, she would only be doing to either fund her drug habit or to pay back money that she owed somebody for drugs. She was working two jobs to say, like, save up for a new apartment. It would be cheaper and easier to do that if she was living with her parents who weren't charging her rent. So that is what I think happened. I think she was meeting people that she owed drug money to that night, and they abducted her. It's that simple. Typically, when people bring up sex trafficking and missing people cases, I just roll my eyes. But in this case, I think it is a possibility considering the circumstances. Like they may have had her do sex work to pay back the money that she owed. However, since it's been 20 years and she hasn't like rented an apartment or been arrested or gotten a credit card. It's almost certain that she is deceased at this point. But I do think it's likely that she was held alive for a few weeks at the most, because I think it's likely that multiple people were involved in this abduction. And there would have been a period of deliberation about what to do. Whereas one person would either have you already know like what they're planning to do. Multiple people would probably have to discuss it over a period of time. Then they would eventually decide, let's just go ahead and kill her so we can move on with this. So that's what I think happened. Let me know what you guys think. And RIP Brianna Maitland.